But we're up in chilly Baltimore today to react to the news that the Orioles are finalizing an agreement with veteran free agent third baseman Maikel Franco. Today's show, we're going to talk about what it could mean for the Orioles infield in 2021, what it means for Rio Ruiz, and much, much more. But first, let's start with who Maikel Franco is as a player. He is a 7-year veteran, spent 6 seasons with the Philadelphia Phillies. Then in his final season with the Phillies, kind of tailed off a bit after some solid production in the middle of his career. Signed a 1-year deal with the Kansas City Royals and is coming off one of his best seasons of his career, as he had a OPS close to 800 last year, 8 home runs, and hit .287 last year with the Kansas City Royals. He's a free agent still out there, maybe the best position player free agent left on the market, as we are just a couple weeks away from opening day. And the Orioles are reportedly in the final terms of their agreement with him, snapping up the veteran third baseman. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and we're going to take your comments. We want to know what you think of the Orioles' addition of Maikel Franco to their infield. Of course, not finalized yet. It was a deal that was first reported by John Heyman last night of MLB Network. Rock Cabocco of MASNsports.com confirming it this morning as well. And once this deal goes through, it will significantly reshape the Orioles' infield. Rio Ruiz, of course, was entrenched as the third baseman for the time being. He was all but guaranteed an opening day roster spot until this move went down. The Orioles are not getting a great defensive third baseman in Maikel Franco. That is perhaps the biggest difference between Rio Ruiz and Maikel Franco. Franco has, over the course of his career, according to Fangraphs, a negative 37 defensive runs saved. However, over the last couple seasons, he has just negative 2 defensive runs saved combined, so it appears to be an area that he has improved upon. He is just 28 years old, so there is some more room for improvement as well. But in terms of an offensive third baseman, he certainly has played that part better than Rio Ruiz over the course of his career. Maybe Franco's best season offensively was his age 25 season back in 2018, when he played 131 games with the Philadelphia Phillies, hit 22 homers, and of course played next to Freddie Galvis, who will now be the Orioles' opening day shortstop. Those two shared the Phillies infield for parts of 4 seasons between 2014 and 2017. If you're just joining us, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. People replying in the Facebook chat talking about when this team is going to hopefully return to the playoffs. As Adam is talking about 2023 as a potential time that the O's could make that run back to the playoffs. And certainly when you look at this move for Maikel Franco, this is a stopgap move. This does not appear to be a long-term fixture at third base in Franco. Though he is on the right side of 30 at this point, it is likely that they are going to sign Franco for a 1-year deal. That's the terms that he signed with the Kansas City Royals last year. His deal was for a reported $3 million with an extra $1 million in incentives with Kansas City last year. We don't know the terms yet of this deal, whether it's a major league deal or a minor league deal, but it is likely to be 1, maybe 2 years. That's the deal that they signed with Freddie Galvis in this offseason. Last year, signing Jose Iglesias to a 1-year deal with another 1-year option. So it's likely that Michael Elias is going down that path as well here. The Orioles do have some internal options going forward at the third base position. They have Ryland Bannon potentially ready to make his big league debut in 2021. They have a couple shortstop prospects who could move over to third in the long term, in Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westberg. But for the time being, it appears that they are ready to move on from Rio Ruiz and stick Maikel Franco at third. So what does this mean for Rio Ruiz, who was one of Michael Elias's first additions to the roster when he took over this position? He was claimed off waivers back in December 2018, less than a month into Michael Elias's tenure as GM. He has played 181 games for the Orioles over the past 2 seasons, hitting a total of .229 with 21 homers. Perhaps the most memorable of those 21 homers came against his former team in the Houston Astros as a walk-off home run on a Sunday afternoon in 2019. He's still just 26 years old, but offensively, he has not developed up to the point that Maikel Franco was at his age 26 season, and certainly not where Maikel Franco is in his age 28 season coming up. Does this mean that Rio Ruiz could stick with the organization as a utility player? Can't play very much shortstop, has only played a few innings at second base during his time in Baltimore. We'll see. And of course, Brandon Hyde the other day spoke with reporters about what the Orioles could do at third base without Rio Ruiz. This was before the signing and the finalizing of this deal with Maikel Franco. The news of that had broke. Brandon Hyde explained what he would like to see from some of the internal options at third if they are without Rio Ruiz in the short term.
Well, we do have a lot of guys that can play over there. So yeah, we're taking a look at a lot of them. Val's going to play over there today. Bannon's been over there. Yomer Sanchez played a full year at third base 1 year with the White Sox. So we do have some options at third base.
We're live, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and taking comments. Jammer saying, nice pickup for now. Ruiz just didn't work out. I think considering the expectations, Ruiz was just a waiver claim a few years ago. He was 23, 24 years old when the Orioles picked him up. The expectations were not particularly high. He had spent time in the Astros organization, the Braves organization, and he did get a lot of games played in Baltimore, but the offensive profile of Rio Ruiz did not live up to the defensive profile. I think defensively he was everything the Orioles have expected from him over at third base, but offensively the numbers were just not quite there. More comments on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Adam saying it is important to note that Franco's defense is greatly improved from early on in his career, and that is what the numbers show out as well. Fangraphs having him as a -2 defensive runs saved combined over the last 2 seasons. Did have -14 defensive runs saved just 3 years ago. Herman, saying on YouTube, sorry I butchered your name, Orioles need offense and Franco will give you that. That's a perfect transition to talk about what this lineup could do when you add Maikel Franco into it. I think this lineup looks a whole lot better when you add a guy who had a 778 OPS last year into the middle of this lineup, and he certainly gives you some protection once you get through the first 4 guys, where you have Austin Hayes, Trey Mancini, Anthony Santander, and Ryan Mountcastle. For now, I just slotted Maikel Franco into that 5 hole there, and then Pedro Severino to back him up. So you have 2 guys who have the ability to go yard in the 5 and 6 spot. For now, I just stuck DJ Stewart in there as the designated hitter. Of course, he is dealing with an injury currently in spring training. And Cedric Mullins, I think, has the potential to be your opening day center fielder with Austin Hayes moving to left. All kinds of different moves that Brandon Hyde could make, and I don't think that the lineup will be a fixture night in and night out in 2021, but this is just what I was predicting for opening day when they take on the Boston Red Sox on April 1st. And then at the end of the lineup, I've got Yomer Sanchez and Freddie Galvis, 2 switch hitters, 2 middle infielders that I think can turn the lineup over and get you back to those power guys in Hayes, Mancini, Santander, and Mountcastle. I think just by the looks of it, the improvement between Rio Ruiz and Maikel Franco is a massive one. I think Rio Ruiz would probably be lower down in this lineup if you were to stick him in the 2021 lineup. Maikel Franco, you have the ability to hit him 5th after those 3 guys right in the middle. I think that would be an improvement there as well. But going back to Rio Ruiz and what he could be in this organization going forward, they're down to a 26-man opening day roster for 2021. This is not like 2020 when they had a 30-man opening day roster. So some guys are going to be left off this roster. The Orioles most likely, I would say, to go with 4 bench bats, take an extra catcher in there as well. That's down to 3. It's going to be hard to come by a lot of those spots in the infield. What could the O's look for in a utility guy? And would Rio Ruiz fit that profile, considering he can really only play third base and maybe in a pinch play second? Brandon Hyde was asked a few days ago what he looks for in his utility guys, and specifically if they need to play shortstop for him.
Well, you definitely would like them to play shortstop. So for me, a true utility player is able to play short, able to spell your shortstop, able to spell your second baseman, third baseman, possibly a corner outfield, and if need be. The more guys you have like that, the better. And today's day, with the grind of a 6-month season and the ability to have to try to give guys days off, you'd like to have as many guys that you can that can play multiple spots. And so shortstop is if you definitely need a backup shortstop. And if it's your true utility guy, that's a bonus.
So you have Pat Vallejo in the organization. You have Ramon Urias. Both of those guys can play shortstop for the O's. You have Yolmer Sanchez, who can move over to third base. And when they claimed him off waivers a few months ago, Mike Elias mentioned the ability of Yolmer Sanchez to play shortstop in a pinch. That might leave Rio Ruiz on the outside looking in, considering he can pretty much only play third base. Maikel Franco, it's not like you can move him around the diamond, maybe stick him at first base in a pinch, but most likely he's going to be your opening day third baseman once this deal gets done. So Rio Ruiz, either he's going to be a bench bat, or he could find himself being optioned down to AAA and maybe perhaps being designated for assignment. But of course, this deal first needs to get done and finalized, as it has been reported that the Orioles are finalizing this deal with 28-year-old third baseman Maikel Franco. And this doesn't even begin to address the discussion of the 40-man roster, because the Orioles currently have a full 40-man roster at this time, meaning they would have to remove somebody from the 40-man roster in order to fit Maikel Franco in there, whether that might be a pitcher, an Ashton Goudeau, a Cole Sulser, or whether they might have to remove one of their veteran infielders, because sticking somebody on the 10-day injured list wouldn't solve the problem of the 40-man roster. It would open a spot on the 26-man roster for opening day, and it's likely that Chris Davis or Hunter Harvey might end up on that opening day injured list. That could open up a spot for Maikel Franco, but for the time being, they need some roster reconstruction here as they look to add Maikel Franco to their roster as well. And before we get out of here, I just want to look at the Orioles' infield moves on the aggregate, because it has been a massive upheaval of the Orioles infield over the past few months under the direction of Mike Elias. Remember that last year's infield consisted of Rio Ruiz at third, Jose Iglesias at short, and Hanser Alberto at second. Over the past few months, they claimed Yolmer Sanchez off waivers. They designated Renato Nunez for assignment, who is their DH but could play third in a pinch. They non-tendered Hanser Alberto. They signed Freddie Galvis to a one-year deal. And now they have this reported agreement with Maikel Franco as a veteran third baseman. Massive upheaval in the Orioles infield, but when you take out Hanser Alberto, Jose Iglesias, and Rio Ruiz, and you replace them potentially with Maikel Franco, Freddie Galvis, and Yolmer Sanchez, I think you could make a fair case that the Orioles infield is just right where it was last year, if not a tick above. Offensively, defensively, I don't think there's much of a drop-off between Freddie Galvis and Jose Iglesias. Maikel Franco to Rio Ruiz, a drop defensively, but perhaps an uptick offensively. And then at second base, Yolmer Sanchez and Hanser Alberto, that could be a wash as well, offensively and defensively. So a lot of changes in this Orioles infield, and we'll see exactly how it turns out. But it is vastly different than the infield that we saw on the diamond for the bulk of 2020 as well. A few more comments before we get out of here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Ben mentioning that you could take Rio Ruiz, of course, off the 40-man roster, and that could be the move for Maikel Franco. Could do that as well, and that would open up the 40-man roster spot, and then he could take his spot on the 26-man opening day roster as well. More comments on YouTube mentioning you need pitching. At this point, the Orioles are looking to see what they're going to get from some of their minor league free agents that they signed a few weeks ago. They have Matt Harvey on the mound today, 1 o'clock, as they take on the Pittsburgh Pirates down in Sarasota, Florida. They have Wade LeBlanc, who has pitched well in spring training. They have Felix Hernandez. I think 2 or all 3 of those guys could be on the opening day roster and into perhaps a 6-man rotation. Brandon Hyde is not yet sure whether he's going to go with a 5-man or 6-man rotation. This is not the end of our coverage. Of course, we have the MASN All Access podcast, which you can check out on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Watch it live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter tomorrow morning. We will have a fresh episode for you. Myself and Brendan Mortensen will have the full details of this agreement, which perhaps could be finalized by the time that we go live tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. And of course, Rock Kabako and Steve Molesky will have you covered as well on MASNsports.com. The second this deal goes down, Rock, of course, will be tweeting, and you can find an article on MASNsports.com. Good morning, peace, as well this morning from Rock about what it could mean for Rio Ruiz and the Orioles infield. So again, Orioles finalizing their deal with Maikel Franco, veteran third baseman. We'll see when that deal exactly goes down, but in the meantime, thanks so much for hopping on our live show. We appreciate you. Give us a follow on MASN Orioles and, of course, on all of our social media channels. Thanks to Brendan Mortensen and Hannah Broder behind the scenes. I'm Paul Mancano. We'll see you later.